Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week we have joining us from Germany, Catherine Kraus. Hey Catherine, welcome to the show.
Hi Vasco, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Catherine is a Scrum Master and team coach, and she inspires and galvanizes others into action with her playful and pragmatic approach. She works with organizations to build happier, healthier teams with purpose, and she has over 15 years experience leading various transformation and change management projects in IT, finance, HR, and marketing. So Catherine, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit about me, my background, how I became a Scrum Master in brief. So I started out my career as a project manager in digital marketing, and my job at the time was to select brand content, to sell products on our digital platforms. And I really had to ask the question, what does the customer really want and need? So that role was all about delivering value to the customer through appealing marketing messages and excellent user experience. And then I moved on to a role in IT as a business analyst. There I was responsible for defining business requirements, but in reality, I really spent most of my time facilitating conversations between groups of customers and business owners and technology experts. And I became kind of this bridge between these different stakeholders, and I love that. It was so much fun for me to understand this, big picture and get everyone on the same page. So that's where I discovered coaching. And I'd ask, my stakeholders questions like, what's your vision for success? And what's the real challenge here for you? And I learned that that's where I really got better results. So that was my way into coaching. And I went on to become a certified coactive coach, and I got my PCC, my professional coaching certification from the International Coaching Federation. And I went on to look for a role where I could do more of facilitation and coaching. I became a lean coach. I ran continuous improvement or Kaizen workshops for our organization. And that led me then to kind of more agile methodologies. I joined my local agile community meetup, and I met several Scrum Masters, and that was an eye-opener because I really loved how they talked about their jobs. They were so passionate about what they do. And I also love the diversity of the Scrum Master role. They could be, working with all levels of the organization, removing impediments for the team, facilitating and teaching and coaching. So, I felt a calling right then and there.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's kind of many guests have also shared that aspect of the journey, which is that you kind of realize that this role fits with my personality, the things I value, the things I get value out of as well. Because you had started your journey already towards the coaching, I guess you also started to kind of put those together, no? Like, okay, this is a role where I could use my coaching skills.
Absolutely. And even more than that, so even starting with the marketing, it was the value for the customer, that focus, it was the bridge between this team and the stakeholders, and it was, of course, that coaching and facilitation.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. All of those are great assets for a Scrum Master.
Absolutely. So I became a Scrum Master then about a year and a half ago. So I'm a little bit new in the Scrum Master world, but it's been the best decision ever. And I currently work, as you said, as a Scrum Master team coach for a medical tech company based out of Germany in a kind of scaled agile setup. We're working in the area of product lifecycle management.
Absolutely. And of course, this kind of calling, as you called it, also drives us sometimes to get our feet into some deep waters, right? And today's
Absolutely.
Monday, the Fail Monday, as we like to call it here on the podcast, where we explore one of those stories where perhaps you were still learning a lot. So we want to dive into that story, Catherine. Then we'll talk about the details and the takeaways later, but tell us that story.
Yeah. So for a few sprints in a row, my team was having this problem of unfinished work. And in our case, we had a lot of spillovers. So these are, incomplete user stories. They were just getting transferred from one sprint to the other. And it was kind of out of control. So I didn't know what was happening because we started out really well. We started out in our planning sessions. We calculated our, team capacity and matched it perfectly with the work chosen for the upcoming sprint. We went through the user stories on the sprint board and everyone kind of nodded in agreement. Yeah, they understood what was expected, right? But it happened that during the sprint, issues and bugs would just kind of magically appear out of nowhere on our sprint board. And we had a real problem of like sneaky bugs and issues that would somehow pop up. And these, important or urgent topics, they really diverted our focus and it made it hard to predict and validate our work effort estimates. So, after some investigation, we discovered that these issues and bugs were sometimes even written by our own team members and estimated on their own without the team, or they were estimated, assigned to us from other teams without consulting us first. So the product owner did accept these ad hoc bugs, at least in the beginning. And then the problem was that our team didn't really know how to reprioritize the work items on our sprint board. And
so they tried to do did I understand correctly that like the bugs would either be like created by the team itself or some other team and then assigned to the team you were working with, and then they just got kind of accepted by default? Is that what was going on?
That's it. Yeah, they got accepted by default, and this left the team really confused on what they had to do first, right? So they focused on the new bugs or issues or the original planned user stories, and not given any direction, they just tried to do everything at once.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar as a pattern, right? Like the team wants to help, the team wants to complete the work, but then more work is discovered. And instead of saying no, which is, of course, done together with the product owner and potentially other stakeholders, but at least with the product owner, kind of the team just says, well, we'll just try to do it, right? Like we'll go for it. We'll try and put the effort in. But of course, that has consequences. So I'm imagining that at some point you had to start talking about the consequences. So what happened?
Yeah, so the consequence was that for 2 sprints, we had spillovers and very unhappy, overworked developers. Sustainable pace was nowhere in sight. We had a disappointed product owner and, of course, really unsatisfied customers because things weren't getting finished. So, what happened was, I started to reflect, commitment is one of these Scrum values for a reason. And it means that you have to say yes to some things, but you also have to say no to other things. And I think this was one of, my biggest challenges as being a Scrum Master is helping to, the teams to understand that the sprint is about the commitment, right? So what happened in the end is that, looking back on this situation, the team wasn't able to really, tackle everything at once. So as a Scrum Master, my failure, when I talk about failure, is that I really should have asked some more tough questions to the team and the product owner. So are these bugs and issues truly more important than what we committed to in our sprint planning? And I also needed to act as a shield for the team when others assigned bugs and issues. And maybe even approach those team members and kind of get some answers there. And I really believe, thirdly, if I had coached the product owner to help him maybe define the product goal better and coach the team how to define better sprinkles, we could have had an easier time prioritizing incoming changes within the sprint, because it does happen, right?
Yeah, and that's the point, right? Because that's the natural way software happens, right? Especially successful products. We'll have people saying, hey, this is not working, this needs to be different, whatever, right? Like the products that nobody cares about will never have bugs because nobody uses them. But the ones that are really in use, of course, bugs will be found. Also, the more you test, the more bugs you found. And we have to be ready as Scrum Masters also for the other aspect, like you were talking about bugs, which is as we deliver stuff, then more ideas come up. And we don't know if the new ideas are better than the old ideas unless we have a way to define that, right? Like some kind of evaluation criteria or some process for the PO to go through those and figure out what's more valuable. So these days, Catherine, when you talk to teams about similar problems, what are the things, the tools you use to kind of raise their awareness as well as help them make decisions? Because at the end of the day, it's all about decision making.
Yeah, right. So at the end of the day, I mean, and I did this with the team as well that had the problem. We did create a buffer for unplanned issues and bugs. So this was really helpful, which meant that we in turn planned less user stories and features, but we did focus on quality rather than quantity. So that was really helpful. And also we really focused for a few sprints after that on the sprint goal, like really looking at that and making sure that that was solid and people understood and committed to that. And I felt that was also helpful to look at the root causes for our sneaky issues and bugs in our retrospective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the aspects that very often gets perhaps forgotten or left by the wayside is this idea that the commitment in Scrum is a very important value, but it can't be commitment to doing everything that falls on our sprint backlog, because we have no power over what the product owner and what the stakeholders and what the customers will come up with, right? Like that's not in the team's remit. The team does not have power over that, but they do have power over saying that, we're going to focus on this goal. And if we reach this goal, we'll do other stuff. But if we don't, then the goal is where we're focusing, right? So I think that the point that you made is very important, that the commitment is towards the goal of the sprint. The commitment is not to maximize the amount of work done by the end of the sprint.
Yes, absolutely. And I think as Scrum Masters, we really have to be vigilant in helping the team identify, these goals, and also kind of remove the impediments for the, help the teams remove impediments, make them able to remove the impediments for these goals, to make sure that they kind of keep the eye on the prize. And, and sometimes it's really difficult. That was my experience, to say something. And especially as being a new Scrum Master, it was really difficult for me. And I think it takes also courage. So, and again, another value of the Scrum method is courage to really take that commitment and stand up for it.
Absolutely. Courage and commitment, two of the key Scrum values. Thank you very much for sharing the story, Catherine.
Thank you.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests helped their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.